The security footage would later show exactly 11:47 p.m. when Adrian Bourne pushed open the door to his private office on the 43rd floor, the one space in the entire building where he could think without interruption, where million-dollar decisions were made over lukewarm coffee and spreadsheets that never seemed to end. He wasn't supposed to be there. He should have been home 3 hours ago, should have been nursing his second scotch and pretending to care about whatever charity gala his publicist had penciled in for next month. But the Singapore merger wasn't going to approve itself, and sleep had become more of a suggestion than a requirement lately. Hey, beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing amazing today. Wherever you're watching from, drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing where this story reaches. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, what unfolds in this story? You're going to want to stick around for every single twist. Now, let's get into it. The office was dark, except for the blue glow of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. New York never actually slept. It just pretended to, humming with 1,000 secrets below, while men like Adrian made decisions that affected thousands of lives with a single signature. He flipped the light switch and froze. Someone was in his office, not sitting in his chair, not rifling through his desk, under it, curled into a tight ball beneath the mahogany desk that cost more than most people's cars, barely visible except for the edge of a threadbare backpack and a shock of dark hair spilling across a jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. A person, a woman, shivering despite the building's climate control. Adrian's first thought was medical. Has she collapsed? Followed immediately by security protocol and the silent question of how anyone had gotten past 3 levels of clearance to end up sleeping in his private office. He moved closer, stepped silent on the Persian rug. Her breathing was shallow but steady. She wasn't unconscious. She was sleeping. Using her backpack as a pillow, knees drawn up to her chest, one hand clutched tight around the strap, like she expected someone to rip it away. And she was freezing. Even from here, he could see the goosebumps on her exposed forearm, the way her whole body trembled in rhythm with breaths that fogged slightly in the overly air-conditioned room. "Hey," Adrian said softly, crouching down. "Miss? Are you—" She bolted upright so fast, she cracked her head against the underside of the desk. The sound was sickening, wood against skull, and she let out a choked gasp that wasn't quite a scream, eyes flying open in pure terror. Not the startled kind, the hunted kind. "I'm sorry." The words tumbled out in accented English, rapid and panicked. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'm so sorry." She tried to scramble backward, and only succeeded in tangling herself further under the desk, arms up defensively like she expected him to hit her. "Whoa! Hey! Stop! Just stop!" Adrian held both hands up, taking a deliberate step back. "You're bleeding." She touched her forehead, and her fingers came away red. Fresh blood. Not much, but enough to track down past her temple. She stared at it like she didn't understand what it was. "I'll clean it," she whispered. "I'll clean everything. Please don't—" "Don't what?" Adrian kept his voice level, non-threatening, the same tone he used in hostile boardroom negotiations. "I'm not going to hurt you, but I need you to tell me what's happening here." She finally looked at him, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Recognition. Not of him personally, but of what he represented. The expensive suit, the building, the power. Her name was Natalie Pruitt, though he didn't know that yet. 23 years old, 5'4", with dark eyes that had seen too much and hands that never stopped moving. She'd been cleaning his office building for exactly 3 weeks, always during the day shift, always quiet, always invisible the way people in her position were trained to be, the way girls like her had to be. "Mr. Bourne," she said finally, voice steadier now, but still edged with fear. "I didn't think anyone would— I'm sorry. I'll go." That's not an answer. He pulled over his desk chair and sat, deliberately positioning himself between her and the door, not to trap her, but to make it clear he wasn't leaving until he understood. "Why are you sleeping under my desk at midnight?" "I worked late. I was tired." "Try again." The fluorescent light from the hallway caught the side of her face, illuminating something he'd missed, a bruise along her jaw, old enough to be yellowing at the edges, but distinct enough to tell a story. "Did someone hurt you?" "No." Too fast, too defensive. "Natalie." He didn't know why he used her first name, maybe because calling her Miss felt wrong when she was clearly terrified. "The building has 112 offices. You chose mine specifically. You're not here by accident, and you're not here because you're tired. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to tell me the truth." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "Why are you hiding in my office?" The question hung in the cold air between them. She could have lied, should have lied. Every survival instinct she'd honed over 3 brutal weeks screamed at her to smile, apologize, and disappear before he asked questions she couldn't afford to answer. But something about the way he looked at her, not through her, not past her, but at her like she was a person who deserved an explanation instead of an inconvenience to be removed, cracked something inside her chest. "Because," she whispered, "your office is the only room in this building where the security cameras cover the door from both angles, and I needed somewhere he couldn't follow me without being seen." Adrian's blood went cold. "Who couldn't follow you?" Natalie Pruitt looked at the man who owned half of Manhattan, who'd never missed a meal or spent a night without a roof over his head, whose biggest problems involved market fluctuations and shareholder votes. And she told him the truth that would shatter both their worlds. "The man who brought me here. The man who owns my work visa, my apartment lease, and the signatures I didn't know I was putting on papers I couldn't read. The man who says I owe him $47,000 for the privilege of cleaning toilets 14 hours a day. The man who has my sister's address in Guatemala and photographs of my mother's clinic." She pulled something from her backpack, a folder worn at the edges and stuffed with documents that looked official, legal, binding. "The man you had lunch with last Tuesday, Victor Mallory." The name hit Adrian like a physical blow. Victor Mallory, philanthropist, donor, friend. The man whose foundation funded immigrant support programs across the city, whose face smiled from half the charity gala photos in Adrian's publicist's files. The man Adrian had personally written a recommendation letter for just 6 months ago. "That's impossible," Adrian said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Natalie placed the folder on the desk between them. "Then explain these." And as Adrian opened it, reading contracts written in legal jargon that technically complied with immigration law while functionally enslaving the person who signed them, reading spreadsheets tracking investments and repayment schedules, reading text messages that were carefully worded threats disguised as concern, he realized 3 things simultaneously. First, she was telling the truth. Second, this went deeper than one girl and one predator. And third, the moment he'd found her sleeping under his desk, his entire life had split into before and after. The question was no longer whether to help her. It was whether either of them would survive what came next. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He sent Natalie home, or rather, sent her to the Peninsula Hotel under a fake reservation, paid in cash, with strict instructions not to answer the door for anyone except him. She'd hesitated at first, clutching that worn backpack like it contained everything she owned in the world, because it probably did. Now, at 6:47 a.m., he sat in his home office in the Tribeca penthouse he barely lived in, surrounded by documents he'd spent 5 hours cross-referencing, legal contracts, bank statements, immigration records he had no business accessing but did anyway because money opened doors that morality kept closed. Every page confirmed what Natalie had told him. Victor Mallory wasn't just a predator. He was a system. "You look like hell," said a voice from the doorway. Elena Vanderbilt, his CFO, his right hand, and the only person who had a key to his apartment, stood there with 2 cups of coffee and the expression she reserved for his worst decisions. Tall, sharp-featured, with silver-streaked hair, she'd stopped dyeing at 40 because she said it made investors take her seriously. Elena had worked with Adrian for 12 years. She'd seen him build an empire from inherited money and actual talent. She'd also seen him spiral. "Didn't know you were coming by," Adrian said. "You sent me 17 encrypted files at 3 a.m. with the subject line, 'We have a problem.' So, yes, I came by." She set the coffee down and dropped into the chair across from him. "Who's Natalie Pruitt?" "The cleaning girl from the office. The one you put in a $5,000 a night hotel suite?" "It's not." Adrian stopped. "How do you know that?" "Because I'm your CFO and I track every expense that moves through your accounts, especially the suspicious ones." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Adrian, what did you do?" So he told her. Not the sanitized version, not the corporate speak version, the truth. Finding Natalie under his desk, the documents, Victor Mallory's name appearing over and over like a signature on a death warrant, the realization that his own donations, his own money, had likely funded whatever operation was destroying girls like Natalie. Elena listened without interrupting, which meant it was worse than he thought. "How many girls?" she finally asked. "I don't know. The documents reference at least 8 current contracts, but the coding suggests more." "And Mallory's doing this through legitimate channels?" "Legal channels," Adrian corrected. "Not legitimate. He's using immigration sponsorships, employment visas, apartment leases, all technically above board until you read the fine print. The debt compounds. The terms are impossible. And if they run, he has leverage back home." Elena was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that preceded nuclear-level decisions. "You can't help her," she said finally. "Excuse me?" "Adrian, listen to me. Mallory sits on the board of 3 foundations you're invested in. He's connected to half the city council. If you expose him, you expose everyone he's worked with, including us. The company can't survive that level of scrutiny right now. The Singapore merger alone." "So I just let her go back to being hunted?" "You find her a lawyer. You make an anonymous donation to an immigrant advocacy group. You do what rich people do, throw money at it from a distance." Elena's voice softened. "I know you want to save her. But you're not a hero, Adrian. You're a CEO. Act like it." It was the same advice she'd given him 100 times over the years. Stay rational, protect the company. Don't let emotions drive million-dollar decisions. It had always worked before. "She has a sister," Adrian said quietly. 17 years old, still in Guatemala. Mallory has people watching her." Elena closed her eyes. "Damn it. And Natalie's been gathering evidence. She has recordings, photographs, copies of other girls' contracts. She's been planning to expose him for weeks, but she can't go to the police because half the documentation makes her look complicit. She's trapped. Then she needs witness protection, not a billionaire with a hero complex. She needs someone who can fight back. Adrian stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the city waking up below. You know what the worst part is? I knew Victor. I've known him for 5 years. We've had lunch, drinks, sat on panels together, and I never saw it. Because people like him are good at hiding, or because I never bothered to look. He turned back to face her. How many other monsters am I funding, Eleanor? How many charity galas have I attended where the money went to something like this? She didn't answer, because they both knew the answer was probably more than 0. If you're feeling that gut punch right now, drop a comment and let me know. And seriously, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story is just getting started. Adrian's phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered anyway. Mr. Bourne. The voice was warm, familiar, dripping with the kind of charm that got donations approved and scandals buried. Victor Mallory. I heard through the grapevine that one of my employees caused some trouble at your building last night. I wanted to personally apologize. Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. Your employee? Natalie, yes. Sweet girl, but troubled. Immigration situation is complicated, you understand. I've been trying to help her navigate the system, but she's been making some poor choices lately. Staying out late, missing payments on her housing. I worry about her. Every word was carefully chosen, plausibly deniable, designed to sound like concern while sending a clear message. I know you found her. I know where she is. Back off. She mentioned you, Adrian said carefully. Did she? Not a question. I hope she didn't misrepresent her situation. These girls, they sometimes exaggerate their circumstances when they're looking for sympathy or money. She showed me contracts. A pause. Briefer than a heartbeat, but there. Employment contracts, yes. Standard documentation for visa sponsorship. All approved by immigration attorneys, I assure you. If there's been any confusion, I'd be happy to walk you through. I don't think that'll be necessary. Adrian. The warmth dropped from Victor's voice like a mask falling away. You're a smart businessman, smarter than most, so I'm sure you understand that sometimes situations are more complex than they appear, and I'm sure you understand that involving yourself in matters you don't fully comprehend could create complications. For everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's friendly advice, from one professional to another. The smile was back in his voice. I'll send someone to collect Natalie this afternoon. I'm sure she's anxious to get back to work. The line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone. Elena was watching him with an expression he recognized, the one she wore when she knew he was about to do something monumentally stupid and couldn't be talked out of it. You're not sending her back, she said. No. You're going to fight him. Yes, even though it could destroy everything we've built. Adrian looked at his CFO, his friend, the woman who'd stood beside him through hostile takeovers and market crashes and every crisis that could be solved with money and strategy. Elena, if everything we've built can only exist by ignoring girls being hunted in our own building, then maybe it should be destroyed. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, picked up her coffee, and headed for the door. I'll clear your schedule for the week, she said without turning around, and I'll start pulling financial records on every foundation Mallory's connected to. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Elena, don't. She paused in the doorway. Just don't get her killed, Adrian. Or yourself. Natalie Pruitt had never stayed in a hotel room that had a separate bathroom for the toilet. She'd spent the night sitting in the armchair by the window, watching the door, unable to convince her body that sleep was safe, even with a deadbolt and a chain lock and 23 floors between her and the street. The bed remained untouched, perfectly made, because using it felt like accepting something she hadn't earned. At 8:15 a.m., someone knocked. She was on her feet instantly, backpack already on her shoulders, weighing her options. The window didn't open. The bathroom had no second exit. She was trapped. "Natalie, it's Adrian Bourne." She recognized the voice but checked the peephole anyway. He stood alone, holding a paper bag that smelled like fresh bread and coffee. No security, no police, no Victor. She opened the door 3 inches, chain still engaged. "You didn't sleep," he observed. "Neither did you." Fair point. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Tie loosened, stubble shadowing his jaw, eyes red-rimmed from staring at documents that had probably confirmed every nightmare she'd described. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then unhooked the chain. Adrian entered and set the bag on the table. Bagels, cream cheese, fruit, coffee that was probably worth more than her weekly wages. He didn't sit, didn't ask her to, just stood there looking like a man who'd made a decision and wasn't entirely sure it was the right one. "Victor called me this morning," he said. Natalie's blood turned to ice. "He knows I'm here. He knows I found you. He doesn't know where you are now." Adrian pulled out his phone, played a recording. Victor's voice filled the room, smooth, threatening, wrapped in plausible deniability. When it ended, Natalie was shaking. "He'll come for me," she whispered. "And when he can't find me, he'll go after my sister. Maria, she's 17. She wants to be a teacher. She's never hurt anyone in her life, and he won't." Adrian's voice was steel. "Because I'm not sending you back, and I'm not letting him anywhere near your family. You can't stop him. He has money, connections, lawyers." Adrian finally sat, leaning forward with an intensity that made her take a step back. "Natalie, I've spent the last 6 hours tracing every dollar I've ever given to Victor Mallory's foundations. Every donation, every investment, every public endorsement, and you know what I found?" She shook her head. "A pattern. 8 girls currently under employment contracts, similar to yours. 12 more in the past 3 years who disappeared from the system. No deportation records, no address changes, just gone. And financial transactions that connect him to 3 city council members, 2 immigration attorneys, and a staffing agency that places workers in half the buildings in Manhattan." He pulled out a folder, not hers, a new one, thicker. "This isn't just Victor, it's a network, and you're not the only one trapped in it." Natalie stared at the folder like it was a bomb. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need to know if you're willing to fight." "Fight?" The word came out broken. "Mr. Bourne, I can't even go to the police without risking deportation. I have no money, no papers that aren't tied to him, no way to—" "You have evidence. You've been collecting it for weeks." She froze. "How did you—" "Because you're smart. Smarter than Victor thinks. Probably smarter than I gave you credit for last night." Adrian stood, moved to the window, and looked out over the city. "You have recordings, photographs, copies of other girls' contracts. You've been building a case because you knew eventually you'd need to expose him. The only thing you didn't have was someone with enough power to make sure you weren't destroyed in the process." "And you think you're that person?" "I think I'm the only option you have right now." The brutal honesty of it hit her harder than any threat. He wasn't promising to save her. He was offering to fight beside her. There was a difference. Natalie moved to her backpack, pulled out a tablet, old, cracked screen, but functional. She'd bought it with money she'd saved from tips, money Victor didn't know about because she'd learned early that anything he knew about could be taken. "There are 6 girls I know personally," she said quietly, opening files. 3 who work in buildings like yours, 2 in restaurants, 1 in a nursing home. All of them brought here the same way I was. Promises of work visas, legitimate employment, a path to citizenship. She pulled up a photograph. A girl, maybe 20, wearing a restaurant uniform, eyes hollow. "This is Katniss Martinez. She tried to run 8 months ago. Victor's people found her in New Jersey. She came back with a broken arm and bruises she couldn't explain. She stopped talking after that." Another photo. "This is Sarah O'Connell, Irish. Thought her accent would protect her, that people would ask questions. They didn't. She owes $63,000 for a visa sponsorship that should have cost $8,000. Photo after photo. Girl after girl. Each one with a story that ended in debt, fear, and silence. "I've been recording my conversations with Victor's assistant for 6 weeks," Natalie continued, voice steadier now. "I have copies of the real contracts, the ones they make us sign after the official paperwork is filed. I have text messages discussing merchandise and inventory. I have proof." "Then why haven't you used it?" She looked at him with eyes that had seen exactly how the world worked for girls like her. "Because the last girl who tried to expose him ended up dead in the Hudson River. Officially ruled a suicide. Unofficially, everyone knew Victor's people were asking about her 2 days before she disappeared." The room went silent. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Not pity, not sympathy, but rage. Cold, calculated rage at a system that could swallow human beings whole, while men like him wrote checks and smiled for cameras and never bothered to look beneath the surface. "What was her name?" he asked quietly. Triss Washington. She was 19. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked back at Natalie. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me everything you have, every recording, every document, every piece of evidence. My CFO is already pulling financial records on everyone connected to Mallory. We're going to build a case so airtight that he can't threaten his way out of it. And when he comes after you, let him try." Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut. "I've been playing nice with people like Victor for too long. Time to remind him why hostile takeovers are called hostile." Natalie wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that someone with power would actually use it for something other than self-preservation. But she'd learned the hard way that powerful men made promises they didn't keep. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Really? Why are you doing this?" Adrian met her eyes. "Because I found you sleeping under my desk, terrified and alone, and I can't unsee that. Because my money helped fund the monster hunting you, and because if I walk away now, I'm exactly the kind of person I've spent my entire life pretending not to be." He extended his hand. "So I'm asking you, Natalie Pruitt, will you help me burn his empire to the ground?" She looked at his hand. Manicured, powerful, belonging to someone who'd never known what it meant to be hunted. Then she thought of Maria, of Katniss and Sarah and all the girls whose names she didn't even know, of Triss Washington, 19 years old, whose body was found in the river because she dared to fight back. And she took his hand. Yes, the war room wasn't supposed to be a war room. Adrian had cleared out a private conference space on the 45th floor, 2 levels above his office, accessible only by key card, with signal jammers Elena had acquired through channels she refused to explain. For 3 days, it had been their headquarters. Natalie sat at the head of the table, tablet open, surrounded by documents she'd organized with the precision of someone who'd been preparing for this moment for months. Adrian had expected her to be tentative, grateful, deferring to his authority. She was none of those things. This one. She tapped a contract. Victor uses the same immigration attorney for all the initial paperwork, Daniel Kim. He's legitimate enough that the filings pass inspection, but look at Clause 14. Adrian leaned in. The legal language was dense, deliberately confusing, but the meaning was clear. Any dispute resolution had to go through private arbitration, effectively preventing the girls from accessing the court system. Smart, Elena muttered from across the table. Legally binding, morally bankrupt. There's more. Natalie pulled up a spreadsheet. The debt doesn't just come from visa fees. They charge for housing 5 times market rate, for training, which is just watching a 15-minute video, for uniforms, background checks, even the bus fare to get to work. By the time we receive our first paycheck, we already owe thousands. And the payments are automatically deducted, Adrian added, having spent the previous night reviewing financial records, leaving just enough for the girls to survive, but never enough to escape. It's a closed loop, Elena said. Elegant, if it weren't evil. Drop a comment if you're as furious about this as I am. And if you're just joining us, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get intense. A knock interrupted them. Adrian tensed, but it was just his assistant, Michael Chen, who'd been with him for 7 years and was one of 3 people who knew what they were really working on. "Sir, you have a visitor. Says it's urgent. Tell them It's Councilman Reeves." The room went silent. James Reeves. City council member, immigrant rights advocate, and, according to the financial records they'd uncovered, recipient of $40,000 in campaign contributions from Victor Mallory over the past 2 years. "Send him away," Elena said immediately. "No." Natalie stood. "Let him in." "Natalie, if he's here, Victor sent him." "Which means Victor's worried." She looked at Adrian. "That means we're close to something." Adrian studied her for a moment. 3 days ago she'd been terrified, shaking, barely able to look him in the eye. Now she stood straight-backed, eyes clear, speaking with the authority of someone who'd stared down worse monsters than a city councilman on a billionaire's payroll. "Send him in," Adrian told Michael, "but stay close." Councilman Reeves entered with the kind of smile politicians perfected, warm, practiced, hiding everything. 50-something, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that cost less than Adrian's, but more than Natalie's entire year's salary. "Adrian, good to see you. Sorry to drop by unannounced." His eyes flicked to Natalie, lingered just a second too long, then returned to Adrian. "I was hoping we could chat privately. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my team." The smile didn't falter, but something behind Reeves's eyes hardened. "Of course. I'll be direct then. I've heard some concerning rumors about you looking into Victor Mallory's business practices." "Have you?" "Victor's a good man. Does important work in the immigrant community. I'd hate to see his reputation damaged by misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings," Natalie repeated softly. Reeves finally looked at her directly. "Miss Pruitt, isn't it? Victor mentioned you've been having some difficulties adjusting to life here. It's not uncommon. The immigration system can be overwhelming, especially for young women without family support." The condescension dripped from every word. "Is that what you call it?" Natalie's voice was steady. "Adjusting? I call it exactly what Victor described, a generous man trying to help someone who's in over her head. And that person making accusations she can't support. Adrian stood slowly. Councilman, I'm going to give you one chance to walk out of here with your dignity intact. I'm just trying to help. You're trying to intimidate a witness on behalf of a man who's trafficking women through fraudulent visa schemes, and you're doing it in my building in front of my CFO, which suggests you're either remarkably stupid or remarkably confident that no one will hold you accountable. Reeves's smile finally cracked. Be very careful, Mr. Bourne. You're playing in waters you don't understand. Try me. The councilman glanced at Elena, then at Natalie, calculating odds. Victor has friends. Important friends. The kind who can make life very difficult for people who interfere with legitimate business operations. Legitimate, Adrian repeated. Is that what we're calling it? I'm calling it a successful immigrant employment program that's helped dozens of young women build lives in this country. If one of them is unhappy with the arrangement, there are proper channels, like the private arbitration clause that prevents them from accessing those channels. Reeves went still. Or like the debt structure that compounds faster than they can pay, or the housing arrangements that cost 5 times market rate and can't be changed without breaching contract. Those are standard business practices. They're slavery with paperwork. Adrian moved around the table, closing distance. And you know it. The question is how much of Victor's money it took to make you forget what you're supposed to stand for. The councilman's face flushed. You have no idea what you're risking. Victor's not just some businessman. He has reach, resources. If you push this, you won't just lose your reputation. You'll lose everything. He already tried that angle. Sent you here to make the threat official? I came here as a courtesy. You came here because Victor's scared, because someone finally has the evidence and the resources to fight back, and because you're realizing that all those campaign contributions might not be enough to keep you clean when this goes public. Reeves straightened his jacket, smile gone entirely. This is a mistake, Adrian, for all of you. He headed for the door, then paused. Miss Pruitt, I hope you understand that making false accusations against respected community members has consequences. Immigration services take fraud very seriously. It would be unfortunate if your status came under additional scrutiny. Natalie flinched, but didn't back down. Is that a threat, Councilman? It's a reminder that the system protects those who work within it, not those who try to tear it down. After he left, silence filled the room. Well, Elena said finally, that could have gone better. No. Natalie was staring at the closed door, something shifting in her expression. That was perfect. Perfect. Adrian turned to her. He just threatened to have you deported. He threatened to have me investigated. There's a difference. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen. And while he was threatening me, I was recording every word. She hit play. Reeves's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Victor has friends. Make life very difficult. Consequences. Additional scrutiny. Adrian stared at her. You recorded a city councilman admitting to witness intimidation. I recorded a city councilman proving that Victor sent him, which means Victor's worried enough to involve his political connections. Natalie met his eyes. Which means we're winning. Elena laughed, sharp, surprised, impressed. I'm starting to really like you. Don't celebrate yet, Adrian warned. If Victor's bringing in his political allies, things are about to get much worse. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. Michael's voice came through, tense. Sir, you need to see this. Now. They found Michael in Adrian's office, laptop open to a news site. The headline made Adrian's blood run cold. Billionaire Adrian Bourne under investigation for immigration fraud. The article was brief, professionally written, citing anonymous sources and concerning allegations about Bourne enterprises employing undocumented workers and circumventing visa regulations. It was a lie, but it was a lie that would tank the Singapore merger, trigger SEC investigations, and put every business deal Adrian had in motion under microscopic scrutiny. "Victor moves fast," Elena said quietly. Adrian read through the article twice, fury and grudging respect warring in his chest. The man was good. Attack first, attack hard, use the system itself as a weapon. "So what do we do?" Michael asked. Natalie stepped forward, still holding her phone with Reeves's recorded threats. "We hit back harder." The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. Adrian had exactly 4 hours to decide if he was really going to destroy his carefully constructed life on national television. "You don't have to do this," Elena said for the 3rd time, pacing his penthouse living room like a caged predator. "We can fight the allegations quietly, issue a statement, let the lawyers handle it, wait for the news cycle to move on. While Victor picks us apart piece by piece?" Adrian was at his laptop, reviewing the presentation Natalie had spent all night preparing. "He fired the first shot. If we don't respond with overwhelming force, he'll bury us. He'll bury us anyway if you go public with accusations you can't fully prove. We have proof. We have evidence of 8 girls under exploitative contracts. We have recorded threats from a councilman. We have financial irregularities." Elena stopped pacing, faced him directly. "What we don't have is Victor Mallory on tape admitting to human trafficking. Without that, he'll claim it's a business dispute, drag it through courts for years, and destroy your company in the process." She was right. Adrian knew she was right, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Natalie curled under his desk, shivering and terrified, and he couldn't walk away. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Bourne." Victor's voice was smooth as silk, warm as poison. "I think it's time we talked. In person." "I don't think—" "Balthazar. The private room upstairs. 30 minutes. Come alone, or don't come at all. But I promise you'll want to hear what I have to say." The line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone. That was Victor, Elena guessed. "He wants to meet." "Absolutely not. It's a trap." "Probably." Adrian was already grabbing his jacket. "But if there's even a chance he'll say something incriminating—" "Adrian, no. You go into a private room with that man and you might not come back out. Then wire me, record everything, and if I'm not out in an hour, call the police. This is insane. Elena." He turned to face her. "We're 4 hours from going public with a story that might not stick. If Victor wants to talk, I need to know why." 20 minutes later, Adrian walked into Balthazar wearing a wire so small it was practically invisible, courtesy of Elena's mysterious security contacts. The restaurant was expensive, exclusive, the kind of place where million-dollar deals were made over $30 appetizers. The private room upstairs was smaller, intimate, soundproofed. Victor Mallory sat alone at a table set for 2, nursing what looked like scotch. He stood when Adrian entered, extending a hand with the warmth of an old friend. "Adrian, thank you for coming." Adrian didn't shake his hand. "You have 30 minutes. Direct. I've always appreciated that about you." Victor gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." Adrian sat, every nerve on high alert. Victor studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "You really care about her, don't you? The girl? Natalie? This isn't about—" "Of course it is. Men like us don't risk empires over principles, Adrian. We risk them over people." Victor leaned back, swirling his drink. I did some research on you after our call. Fascinating background. Self-made billionaire, philanthropist, Harvard MBA. But the interesting part? Your mother. Adrian's blood went cold. Leave her out of this. Maria Bourne immigrated from the Philippines in 1982. Worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school. Married your father. Old money, Connecticut family, against his parents' wishes. Died when you were 16. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Breast cancer, wasn't it? Treatable if she'd had better insurance. But she waited too long because she was afraid of the medical debt. Every word was a calculated strike. You think this is about me reliving childhood trauma? Adrian's voice was ice. You're wrong. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, you found a scared immigrant girl and saw your mother. You're trying to save someone you couldn't save 30 years ago. It's almost touching. You're trying to get in my head. I'm trying to help you understand that you're being manipulated. Victor leaned forward, voice dropping to something almost gentle. Natalie is very good at what she does. Did she tell you she's been in the country for 8 months, not 3 weeks? Did she mention that she worked for another sponsor before me? One she accused of similar crimes until he paid her $10,000 to go away? Adrian's stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? Victor pulled out a folder, of course he had a folder, and slid it across the table. Police report from Boston, March 2024. Natalie Pruitt filed complaints against a restaurant owner named Chen, claimed he was exploiting her visa status. Investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing. Case dismissed. Chen paid her anyway to avoid bad publicity. Adrian opened the folder with shaking hands. The police report looked legitimate. Dates, signatures, official letterhead. Natalie's name appeared throughout, along with accusations that read eerily similar to what she'd told him. She's running a con, Adrian. A sophisticated one, I'll admit. She targets successful men, plays the victim, gathers just enough evidence to make the accusations plausible, then waits for the settlement offer. The other girls are real employees with legitimate grievances about working conditions, which I'm happy to address through proper channels. But Natalie convinced them to participate in her scheme by promising them money from whatever lawsuit she could manufacture. Adrian's mind was racing. The documents looked real. The story made a sick kind of sense. But the contracts, he said, the debt structures, the threats against her sister. Standard employment agreements that she signed willingly, debt she actually owes, and threats that exist only in her imagination. Victor's voice softened. Adrian, I understand why you want to believe her, but ask yourself, in 3 days, has she done anything that doesn't serve her agenda? Has she shown you anything that couldn't be fabricated? The wire felt heavy against Adrian's chest, because the terrible truth was he didn't know. He'd taken Natalie's word because she seemed genuine, because he wanted to help, because she'd been shivering under his desk looking terrified. But con artists were supposed to seem genuine. Why are you telling me this? Adrian asked. Because I actually like you. And because I'd rather resolve this privately than watch you destroy yourself publicly. Victor slid a check across the table. $1 million made out to Adrian Bourne. Walk away. Keep the money. Call it compensation for your time and trouble. Tell Natalie the deal's off. She'll disappear, find another mark, and everyone moves on. Adrian stared at the check. And if I don't, then we both know how this ends. I expose her con. You look like a fool who got manipulated by a pretty face and a sob story. Your Singapore merger collapses. Your reputation never recovers. Victor's smile turned sharp. And Natalie? She gets deported for immigration fraud, along with any other girls she convinced to lie for her. The threat was clear, brutal, effective. Adrian stood, leaving the check on the table. I need time to think. You have until your press conference. 2 p.m., wasn't it? Victor stood as well. Make the right choice, Adrian, for everyone involved. Adrian walked out of the restaurant, got into his car, and drove 3 blocks before pulling over and vomiting in an alley. Elena was waiting at the penthouse with Natalie, who took one look at his face and went pale. What happened? Adrian pulled out his phone, played the recording for both of them. When it ended, Natalie was shaking, not with fear this time, but with rage. It's a lie, she said. All of it. The police report looks real, because it is real. But it's not about me. It's about a different Natalie Pruitt. There are 6 women with that name in the immigration system. She pulled out her own phone, fingers flying. Look, Natalie Marie Pruitt, born 1997, Boston. That's who filed that complaint. I'm Natalie Rose Pruitt, born 1999, Guatemala. Different person, same name. Victor's betting you won't check. She pulled up her passport, birth certificate, documentation that proved she wasn't the woman in Victor's police report. Adrian felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly. The check? Elena asked. Refused it? Good. Natalie met his eyes, and in that moment Adrian saw something he hadn't before, not fear, not desperation, but absolute certainty. Because I need you to know something. Everything I told you is true. Every document, every recording, every girl whose story I shared, it's all real. She moved closer. But Victor's right about one thing. I have been planning this for months, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, looking for someone with enough power to actually fight back. Her voice dropped. I chose you, Adrian. Not because you found me by accident, but because I made sure you'd find me. The office, the timing, the documents I left visible, all of it was calculated. The room went silent. You set me up, Adrian said slowly. I gave you the truth and the tools to do something about it. That's not a con. That's survival. She didn't look away. So now you know. I manipulated you into caring, and I'd do it again because girls like me don't get saved by accident. We have to save ourselves. The press conference was canceled, not by Adrian, by the building itself. At 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes before they were scheduled to go live, the entire 43rd floor lost power. Emergency lighting flickered on, but the cameras, microphones, internet connection, everything they needed, went dark. This isn't a coincidence, Elena said, phone pressed to her ear as she argued with building maintenance. Someone cut the power deliberately. Adrian stood at the window, watching the city below, mind still reeling from Natalie's confession. I chose you. I manipulated you into caring. She'd played him. Brilliantly, completely. And the worst part was he couldn't even be angry, because she'd been right to do it. Sir, Michael appeared in the doorway, face white. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is downstairs. They have a warrant for Natalie Pruitt's arrest. The world tilted. On what grounds? Elena demanded. Visa fraud, false testimony, conspiracy to commit extortion. Michael's hands shook as he held up his phone. It's all over the news. They're saying she fabricated evidence against multiple employers and that Adrian was her accomplice. Natalie appeared behind Michael, already holding her backpack like she'd known this moment was coming. Where is she? Adrian asked. Still in the conference room, gathering. No. Natalie's voice was hollow. I'm right here." She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of inevitability had compressed her back into the terrified girl Adrian had found under his desk. But her eyes were clear, resigned. "I need to go down there," she said. "Absolutely not." Adrian moved between her and the door. "They have no grounds. They have a warrant signed by a federal judge. Victor's reach goes deeper than we thought." She smiled, sad and bitter. "He didn't just prepare for this, Adrian. He built the cage months ago. He was just waiting for the right moment to spring it. Then we fight it. We get lawyers. There's no time. If I run, they'll arrest you for harboring a fugitive. If I go willingly, maybe." She trailed off, because they both knew there was no maybe here. Elena was already on her phone. "I'm calling our immigration attorney. We can argue the arrest is retaliatory. File for emergency." "Miss Pruitt," a voice echoed from the stairwell. "ICE agents didn't wait for elevators when they had warrants. We know you're on this floor. Come out now, and this can be handled peacefully." Natalie moved toward the door. Adrian caught her arm. "Wait. Just wait. There has to be another way." "There isn't." She looked at him with eyes that had already accepted defeat. "Victor won. He always wins. Men like him don't lose to girls like me." "You're giving up?" "I'm being realistic." She gently pulled her arm free. "But thank you. For 3 days, I actually thought we had a chance." She started walking toward the stairwell. Adrian's mind raced through options, discarding each one as fast as it appeared. Call the media. Victor owned half of them. Go to the police. Victor had political connections at every level. Run? Where? How? With what resources? They'd been outplayed. Natalie reached the stairwell door, hand on the handle. "Wait!" Elena's voice cracked like a whip. "Adrian, the Singapore merger." "What about it?" "Victor sits on the advisory board for Titan Industries, the company we're merging with. He's been feeding them information, poisoning the deal from the inside." She held up her phone, eyes wide. "If he gets arrested, the merger collapses because of ethics clauses. He's protected himself using your own company as a shield." The full horror of it crystallized. Victor had weaponized everything. The political connections, the legal system, even Adrian's own business deals. He'd built a fortress where attacking him meant destroying yourself. Checkmate. The stairwell door burst open. 6 ICE agents in tactical gear flooded the hallway, weapons drawn, overkill for one unarmed girl, but Victor liked sending messages. "Natalie Pruitt, you're under arrest for visa fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying federal documents." The lead agent, Rodriguez, according to his badge, moved forward with zip ties. Natalie stood perfectly still, hands visible, compliant. "She has a right to an attorney," Adrian said, voice shaking with suppressed rage. "She'll get one at processing." Rodriguez secured her wrists behind her back, methodical and cold. "Mr. Bourne, I'd advise you to step back. Interfering with a federal arrest is a felony." "Adrian." Natalie's voice was quiet. "Don't. Please." He watched them lead her toward the stairs, this girl who'd manipulated him into caring, who'd been gathering evidence and building a case alone, because she knew no one with power would help her unless she forced them to. She'd been right about that, too. At the stairwell, Natalie turned back one last time. "The other girls, Katniss, Sarah, the others, please don't let him. Move it." Rodriguez pushed her through the door, and she was gone. Elena grabbed Adrian's arm before he could do something stupid like follow. "Let her go. We need to regroup. Figure out what?" "We lost." Adrian's voice was dead. "Victor dismantled us in 72 hours. The merger's dead, our reputation's destroyed, and the one person who had the courage to fight back is about to be deported to a country where Victor's people are waiting." His phone buzzed. Victor, of course. The message was simple. "I tried to warn you. The money's still on the table if you want to salvage what's left of your company." Adrian stared at it for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would either save everything or destroy what little remained. He called Victor. "I want to meet, tonight, somewhere public." Finally seeing reason? Victor's voice was smug, victorious. "I'm seeing reality. You win. I'm done fighting." Adrian forced defeat into his voice, let exhaustion bleed through. "But I need guarantees. For Natalie's release. For the other girls' safety. If I'm walking away, I want to know they won't be hurt." A pause. Victor was calculating, weighing the offer for traps. "The Met. Closing time. 9 p.m. Come alone." "Fine." Adrian hung up. Elena was staring at him. "Please tell me you have a plan." "I have the beginning of one." He pulled up a contact on his phone, someone he'd hoped never to call, someone whose methods existed in the gray space between legal and lethal. "But it requires doing things I swore I'd never do." "Adrian, Victor wants to play dirty? Then we play dirtier." His voice was ice and fury and something darker. "He has Natalie. He has the legal system. He has political protection. But he made one mistake." "What mistake?" "He thinks I'll follow the rules." Adrian's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "He's about to learn what happens when you push a desperate man with unlimited resources and nothing left to lose." At 8:47 p.m., Adrian stood outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art, waiting for closing time. Elena had protested. Michael had begged him to reconsider. Every rational voice in his head screamed that this was insane. But Natalie was in a detention center facing deportation to a country where Victor's people waited. And Adrian was done being rational. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, actually from Elena's security contact, using an encrypted app. "Team in position, audio and video active, recording everything. But boss, whatever you're planning, we can't protect you if it goes south." Adrian typed back, "Then don't let it go south." The museum doors opened. Victor Mallory stood in the shadows of the grand entrance, alone as promised, smiling like he'd already won. Because he had. But Adrian was about to teach him that winning a battle and surviving the war were two very different things. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, after closing, was a cathedral of silence. Adrian walked through the empty halls, footsteps echoing on marble floors, past artifacts worth millions that suddenly seemed meaningless compared to one girl's life. Victor waited in the Temple of Dender, dramatic choice, surrounded by ancient stone and reflecting pools, like a pharaoh holding court. "Adrian, I'm glad you came to your senses." Victor extended his hand again. This time Adrian shook it, and felt the slight bulge of a recording device in Victor's jacket pocket. "He's recording too. Smart." "Let's skip the pleasantries," Adrian said, releasing his hand. "You wanted me here to gloat. So gloat." "Not gloat, negotiate." Victor gestured to a bench beside the reflecting pool. "Sit. We're both civilized men." Adrian sat. Knowing Elena's team was capturing every word, every angle. The museum had security cameras, but Victor had probably disabled them. He didn't know about the micro-cameras hidden in Adrian's cufflinks, his watch, the button on his jacket. "Natalie's detention can be adjusted," Victor began. "The charges can be reduced, the deportation timeline extended. All it requires is your cooperation." "Meaning?" "A public statement, You were deceived by a con artist, you've severed all ties, you apologize for the accusations against me and my foundations. In return, I ensure she's treated well in custody and eventually deported without additional charges. And the other girls? Continue their legitimate employment, no retaliation, no consequences. Victor's smile was magnanimous, merciful, the smile of a man who'd crushed his opposition and could afford generosity. I'm not a monster, Adrian. I'm a businessman who provides opportunities to people who need them. Opportunities. Adrian let the word hang. Is that what you call it when you charge them 5 times market rate for housing they can't leave? Market rates are subjective. When you compound debt faster than they can pay? Financial literacy isn't my responsibility. When you threaten their families back home? Victor's smile didn't falter. I've never threatened anyone. If employees have concerns about their contracts, there are proper channels. If they choose not to use those channels, that's not my failing. Because the channels all lead back to people you own. I don't own anyone. That would be illegal. Victor leaned back, completely at ease. I provide services. I charge fees. People sign contracts voluntarily. If they don't like the terms, they're free to leave. Except they're not free. That's the entire point. Legally, they are. Practically, they have obligations to fulfill. There's a difference. Victor studied him. You're recording this conversation, aren't you? Adrian didn't answer. Of course you are. Hoping I'll say something incriminating, something that proves all of Natalie's wild accusations. Victor laughed. Genuine amusement. Adrian, I've had this same conversation with lawyers, journalists, and federal investigators. I've been audited 4 times. Every contract I write is reviewed by 3 separate attorneys. Every transaction is documented. Every employee signature is notarized and voluntary. He spread his hands. I'm untouchable because I'm legitimate. The system protects me because I work within it. You can record me all you want. You can expose me on national television. And nothing will change because what I'm doing isn't technically illegal. It's just morally repugnant, and the law doesn't care about morality. The truth of it was suffocating. Victor stood, moved to the edge of the reflecting pool, admiring his reflection like Narcissus meeting his match. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to make that statement. You're going to salvage your company and your reputation. Natalie gets deported but treated humanely, and in 6 months, when this is all blown over, you'll realize I did you a favor. You'll see girls like her for what they really are, survivors who'll do whatever it takes, including manipulating well-meaning rich men who think they're heroes. She didn't manipulate me, didn't she? Victor turned, eyebrow raised. She positioned herself to be found by you specifically. She had documentation ready, a sob story perfected, tears on command. She knew exactly which buttons to push. You said it yourself. She chose you. Because she needed help. Because she needed a mark. Victor's voice was almost gentle. The sooner you accept that, the easier this becomes. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ancient temple stones that had survived thousands of years of empire and conquest. Then he stood. You're right about one thing. Natalie did choose me, and she manipulated me into caring. He met Victor's eyes. But here's what you don't understand. I'm glad she did. Victor frowned. Excuse me? I spent 30 years building an empire and never once looking at who I was stepping on to build it. I wrote checks to foundations without asking where the money went. I smiled for cameras at galas celebrating humanitarian work while girls were being destroyed with my donations. Adrian's voice was steady, cold. Natalie forced me to see that. She weaponized my guilt and my privilege and my desperate need to be better than my worst instincts. And you know what? She was right to do it. This is very touching, but I'm not making your statement. I'm not apologizing, and I'm not walking away. Victor's smile finally died. Then you'll lose everything. Maybe. Probably. Adrian pulled out his phone. But before I do, there's something you should know. While you were busy dismantling my company and having Natalie arrested, Elena was doing something interesting. He pulled up a video, turned the phone so Victor could see. The screen showed a press conference, not Adrian's canceled one, but a different event happening right now. Senator Catherine Park stood at a podium, flanked by 3 women Adrian recognized from Natalie's photographs, Katniss Martinez, Sarah O'Connell, and a third girl, Isabella Chen, who Victor had been very careful to keep hidden. While you were focused on me, Adrian continued, Elena reached out to every person you've ever exploited, not just the girls, everyone. Former employees who signed NDAs, attorneys who quit your firm over ethical concerns, city inspectors who were pressured to ignore violations. She offered them protection, legal support, and, most importantly, a platform. On the screen, Katniss was speaking, voice shaking but determined. Victor Mallory told me if I went to the police, my brother would lose his work visa. He told me I owed him $73,000 for a sponsorship that cost $8,000. He told me I was property until the debt was paid. Victor's face went white. You think you're untouchable because you work within the system, Adrian said quietly. But Elena found something better than proof of illegal activity. She found 53 people willing to testify that you're a predator who weaponizes immigration law. And Senator Park? She's introducing legislation tomorrow to close every loophole you've been exploiting. The Mallory Act, she's calling it. Named after you. I can't prove you broke the law, but I can make sure everyone knows exactly how you've been following it. I can make you radioactive. Every foundation will drop you, every politician will distance themselves, every business partner will cut ties. Adrian pocketed his phone. You wanted to destroy my reputation? Fine, but I'm taking yours down with me. Victor's composure cracked completely. Those women signed NDAs, confidentiality agreements. They can't what? Tell the truth? Elena's lawyers found a way around every NDA you've ever written, something about duress, coercion, and public interest. Adrian smiled, sharp and vicious. Turns out, when you spend years exploiting people, you make a lot of enemies, and when someone finally gives them a way to fight back, they take it. I'll bury you. You already did. The difference is I don't care anymore. Adrian headed for the exit, then paused. Oh, and Victor? About Natalie's detention? What about it? While we've been talking, Elena filed an emergency motion with 3 federal judges, ones you don't own. The arrest was retaliatory, the charges are false, and the evidence proving it includes the recording of your meeting with me where you offered to adjust her detention in exchange for my cooperation. That's called obstruction of justice. He pulled out a second phone, the one Elena had given him, encrypted and recording everything. Your jacket pocket, recording device right side? I felt it when we shook hands. Which means you have audio of yourself admitting you can manipulate the federal detention system. Adrian's smile was pure vindication. You just confessed to a federal crime. On tape. Trying to entrap me. Victor stared at him, realization dawning. One more thing. The Singapore merger? It's not dead. We restructured it yesterday to exclude anyone with connections to your foundations. New partners, new terms, better deal. You tried to use my company as a shield, but Elena found a way around that too." Adrian walked away, leaving Victor Mallory standing alone in the temple, surrounded by ancient stones that had witnessed the fall of empires far greater than his. Behind him, he heard Victor's voice, desperate now. "This isn't over." "Yes," Adrian called back without turning. "It really is." Outside, Elena waited by the car, phone in hand. "How'd it go?" "He confessed to federal crimes, threatened witnesses, and admitted to manipulating the legal system. All on tape." Adrian felt lighter than he had in days. "How's Natalie?" "Emergency motion granted 10 minutes ago. She's being released into protective custody pending review. Park's office is fast-tracking her asylum claim." Adrian breathed for what felt like the first time in hours. "The other girls?" "Safe, protected. Senator Park's got them covered." Elena studied him. "You know this is going to get uglier before it gets better." "I know." "Victor has resources, connections. He'll fight back." "Let him." Adrian opened the car door. "I'm done being afraid of men who mistake cruelty for power." His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you." End 3 words. But they meant everything. The hearing took place 48 hours later in a federal courthouse that smelled like old wood and broken promises. Adrian sat in the gallery beside Elena, watching as Natalie was led into the courtroom wearing clothes that actually fit, courtesy of Senator Park's office, instead of the detention center jumpsuit she'd been trapped in. Her eyes found his immediately, a silent acknowledgment that everything they'd fought for came down to the next 2 hours. Victor Mallory sat on the opposite side, flanked by 4 attorneys in suits that cost more than most people's annual salary. He looked composed, confident, like a man who'd weathered storms before and knew he'd weather this one too. He didn't know he'd already lost. Judge Margaret Chen entered, 60-something, stern-faced, with a reputation for despising anyone who wasted her time. She'd reviewed the emergency motion, the evidence, and the recordings. Now she had to decide if Natalie Pruitt was a criminal or a victim. "This is an expedited hearing on the matter of immigration fraud charges against Miss Natalie Rose Pruitt," Judge Chen began. "Mr. Kimura, you're representing the defendant?" David Kimura stood, Elena's personal attorney, one of the best immigration lawyers on the East Coast. "Yes, Your Honor, and we're prepared to demonstrate that these charges are retaliatory, fabricated, and part of a systematic effort to silence witnesses in a larger criminal conspiracy." Victor's lead attorney, Harrison Grant, stood immediately. "Your Honor, these are serious accusations. Miss Pruitt has a documented history of making false claims against employers." "About that." Kimura pulled up a screen. "The documented history you're referring to involves a different Natalie Pruitt, Natalie Marie Pruitt from Boston, born 1997. My client is Natalie Rose Pruitt from Guatemala, born 1999. Different person. Same name. The police report Mr. Mallory provided was deliberately misleading. He displayed both women's documentation side by side, birth certificates, passport photos, immigration records." Grant's face tightened. "An honest mistake?" "Is it honest when your client has access to the same records we do? When he specifically chose to present the wrong documentation to discredit my client?" Kimura's voice was surgical. "Or is it evidence of malicious prosecution?" Judge Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Grant, did your client verify he had the correct individual before filing charges?" "We relied on information provided by—" "Yes or no, Counselor?" A pause. "The investigation is ongoing." "That's not an answer." Judge Chen made a note. Continue, Mr. Kimura. Your Honor, the charges against Miss Pruitt stem from allegations that she fabricated evidence against Victor Mallory. We'd like to present testimony from multiple witnesses that corroborates every claim she made. For the next hour, the courtroom became a confessional. Katniss Martinez testified about contracts that ballooned from $8,000 to $63,000. Sarah O'Connell described threats against her family back in Ireland. Isabella Chen, the girl Victor had hidden so carefully, explained how she'd been trapped for 18 months, working 19-hour days and sleeping in a basement storage room because her housing turned out to be a bed in a crowded apartment with 7 other workers. Each testimony was calm, factual, devastating. Victor's attorneys objected, claiming hearsay, irrelevance, improper procedure. Judge Chen overruled them every time. Your Honor, Grant finally said, desperation creeping in, even if these employment disputes are legitimate, they don't negate the fact that Miss Pruitt falsified federal documents. Which documents? Kimura interrupted. The visa application contained false information about her employment history and financial status. Information provided by Mr. Mallory's organization during the sponsorship process, information my client signed because she was told it was standard procedure and didn't speak enough English to understand what she was signing. Kimura pulled up more evidence. We have the original applications. Notice the handwriting? Not Miss Pruitt's. The signatures are hers, but everything else was filled out by Mallory's staff. He displayed photos of other applications, all with the same handwriting, all for different girls. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was systematic fraud committed by the sponsor and blamed on the victims. Victor's mask finally slipped. He leaned forward, whispering urgently to his attorneys. Additionally, Kimura continued, we have recordings of Mr. Mallory and his associates discussing their operations. He played audio, carefully edited to remove anything that might be considered entrapment, but devastating nonetheless. Victor's voice discussing merchandise, inventory, and return on investment when referring to the girls. His assistant explaining how to structure contracts to maximize debt while remaining technically legal. And finally, the recording from the Met, where Victor admitted he could adjust Natalie's detention in exchange for Adrian's cooperation. The courtroom went silent. Judge Chen's expression could have flash-frozen hell. Mr. Grant, does your client wish to make a statement? Grant looked at Victor, who shook his head sharply. No, Your Honor. Then here's my ruling. Judge Chen removed her glasses, a gesture that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. The charges against Miss Pruitt are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation into immigration fraud, labor trafficking, and obstruction of justice, not against Miss Pruitt, but against Victor Mallory and his associated entities. Victor shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is— Sit down, Mr. Mallory, or I'll hold you in contempt. Judge Chen's voice was ice. I've been a federal judge for 23 years. I've seen every kind of exploitation imaginable. But using the immigration system itself as a weapon against vulnerable people, that's a new low. She turned to Natalie. Miss Pruitt, I'm granting you temporary protected status pending a full asylum review. You'll be assigned a caseworker and legal representation. Additionally, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Mr. Mallory or his associates from contacting you or your family. Natalie's hands shook. My sister— Senator Park's office has already contacted the Guatemalan embassy. Your sister is being moved to a safe location with round-the-clock protection. Judge Chen's expression softened slightly. You're safe now, both of you. Tears streamed down Natalie's face. Victor's attorneys were already gathering their materials, preparing damage control strategies, but it was too late. The U.S. attorney was in the courtroom, watching everything. Federal agents were waiting in the hallway, and outside, media crews had gotten wind of the story. Not from Adrian's canceled press conference, but from Senator Park's carefully orchestrated revelation. By the time Victor left the courthouse, his face was on every news channel with the headline, "Philanthropist Accused of Labor Trafficking Scheme." Adrian watched from Elena's car as federal agents approached Victor on the courthouse steps. They didn't arrest him, not yet, but the questioning had begun. "It's not over," Elena said quietly. "He has lawyers, money, connections." "I know." Adrian pulled out his phone, checking messages. "But we broke the dam. Everything he's built is flooding out." His phone buzzed. Natalie, calling from the courthouse. "Hey," Adrian answered. "I don't know how to thank you." Her voice was thick with tears. "You risked everything." "You're the one who risked everything. I just had the resources to back you up." He paused. "What happens now?" "I testify. I help build the case. And I try to figure out how to live in a world where I'm not running anymore." A pause. "Adrian?" "Yeah? That first night, when you found me under your desk? I was terrified you'd just call security and have me removed, that you'd be like every other powerful person who looks through girls like me. But I wasn't." "No, you weren't." Her voice softened. "You saw me, really saw me, and that changed everything." After they hung up, Adrian sat in silence, watching the courthouse empty, watching federal agents escort Victor to a waiting car, watching the beginning of justice unfold in real time. Elena handed him a tablet. "The Singapore merger closed this morning. Stock's up 12%. The board wants to schedule a press conference about your courageous stand against exploitation." Adrian laughed, tired, slightly broken, but genuine. "Tell them no press conference. Just quietly donate to Senator Park's new foundation, the one supporting trafficking victims." "How much?" "Whatever we would have spent on the press conference, times 100. Elena smiled. "You know, 3 days ago you were a ruthless CEO who cared more about profit margins than people. 3 days ago I was an idiot. And now?" Adrian looked at the courthouse where a girl who'd been sleeping under his desk had just reclaimed her life. "Now I'm trying to be better." 6 months later, Adrian stood in the office on the 43rd floor where everything had changed. The desk, the one Natalie had slept under, was still there, though he'd donated the original to a museum fundraiser and replaced it with something less haunted by memory. The city beyond the windows looked the same, relentless, glittering, indifferent to the small revolutions happening within its walls. But everything else was different. Victor Mallory was awaiting trial on 17 counts of immigration fraud, labor trafficking, and racketeering. 3 city council members had resigned. Daniel Kim, the immigration attorney, had lost his license. The network Victor built had collapsed spectacularly, taking down everyone complicit in its machinery. 53 girls had been freed from fraudulent contracts. 53 lives given back. The knock on his door was soft, familiar. "Come in." Natalie entered, and Adrian barely recognized her. Not because she looked different, though she did, wearing professional clothes that fit, hair pulled back, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd stopped running, but because she was smiling. Actually smiling, the kind that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. "You're late," Adrian said, mock stern. "Traffic, and I had to drop Maria at Columbia." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. "She starts her teaching program next semester. full scholarship. That's incredible. She cried for an hour when she got the acceptance letter. Said she couldn't believe she was actually safe enough to dream again. Natalie moved to the window, looking out over the city that had tried to swallow her whole. Thank you. For making sure she could come here legally, for sponsoring her student visa through the foundation. Thank Elena, she handled the paperwork. I already thanked her. 3 times. She told me to stop or she'd start charging for emotional labor. Natalie laughed. I like her. Everyone does. Eventually. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city move below. 6 months ago, this moment would have been impossible. 6 months ago, Natalie had been terrified to even look at him directly. Now she stood beside him like an equal, because she was. I brought you something, Natalie said, pulling a folder from her bag. The final report from Senator Park's task force. Adrian opened it, scanning pages of policy recommendations, legal reforms, and implementation strategies. The Mallory Act had passed, unanimously, which almost never happened, closing the loopholes Victor had exploited and creating protections for immigrant workers. But the last page made him stop. It was a photograph from the bill-signing ceremony. Senator Park in the center, surrounded by the girls who'd testified. Katniss, Sarah, Isabella, and 8 others whose names Adrian had learned over the past months. And in the front row, standing between the senator and Adrian himself, was Natalie, head high, eyes clear, smiling like she'd just won a war, because she had. You should frame that, Adrian said quietly. I already did. 1 copy for me, 1 for Maria, and 1 for... She trailed off, smile fading slightly. For Triss. I visit her grave every week. Tell her we won. Tell her she wasn't forgotten. Triss Washington, 19 years old. The girl who'd tried to fight Victor alone and paid with her life. She'd be proud of you, Adrian said. I hope so. Natalie turned from the window, expression shifting to business. Speaking of which, I have 8 interviews scheduled this week. The Foundation's getting applications faster than we can process them. The Foundation, officially the Triss Washington Immigrant Justice Fund, funded by Adrian, operated by Natalie and a staff of 6 former victims turned advocates. It provided legal support, housing assistance, and job placement for immigrant workers trapped in exploitative situations. In 6 months, they'd helped 234 people. 8 interviews in 1 week? Adrian raised an eyebrow. That's a lot. It's not enough. There are thousands of people still trapped in situations like mine. Victor wasn't the only one doing this. He was just the one who got caught. Her jaw set with determination. We're going to find them all. Every single operation using immigration law as a weapon. And we're going to burn them down. There was the fire Adrian remembered from that first night. The survivor who'd been gathering evidence alone, who'd manipulated a billionaire into caring, who'd refused to stay a victim. You'll need resources, he said. I have a meeting with 3 potential donors next week. Make it 4. I'm increasing the Foundation's endowment. Adrian, you've already given. Not enough. Never enough. He closed the folder, met her eyes. Natalie, what you're building, it's going to outlive both of us. It's going to save people who haven't even realized they need saving yet. That's worth every dollar I have. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. You really believe that? I know that. He moved to his desk, pulled out a document. Which is why I'm making it official. $10 million endowment to the Foundation, with annual increases tied to company profits, and I'm stepping down as board chair. What? No. You should lead it. You understand the work better than I ever could. I'll stay on as a donor and advisor, but this is your vision. Your fight. He handed her the document. Make it count. Natalie stared at the papers, hands shaking. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fighting. Say you'll help girls who are where you were 6 months ago. Say you'll make sure no one else has to sleep under a desk because they're too terrified to go home. I will. She wiped her eyes, smile breaking through. I promise. Adrian's phone buzzed. Elena, reminding him about the shareholder meeting in 20 minutes. I have to go, he said. But Natalie? Yeah. I'm proud of you, what you've accomplished, who you've become. You're not the girl I found under that desk anymore. No, she smiled. I'm not. But I wouldn't have become who I am without the man who bothered to ask why I was there. After she left, Adrian stood alone in his office, looking at the space under his desk where everything had started. He thought about the person he'd been 6 months ago, the CEO who wrote checks and never asked questions, who built empires without caring who he stepped on, who thought philanthropy meant donations and photo opportunities. That person was gone. In his place was someone who understood that real change required sacrifice, that power meant responsibility, and that sometimes the most important decision you could make was to actually see the people others chose to ignore. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Natalie. Thank you for seeing me, for believing me, for fighting beside me when no one else would. You changed my life. And Adrian typed back, You changed mine first. Keep changing the world. A. He pocketed his phone and headed to the shareholder meeting where he'd announce new corporate policies about supply chain transparency and worker protections that would cost millions but save lives. Some of the board would push back. Some would call it bad business. Adrian didn't care, because 6 months ago he'd found a girl sleeping under his desk, terrified and alone, and in helping her reclaim her life, he'd reclaimed his own humanity. That was worth more than any profit margin. That was worth everything. 3 years later, the Tries Washington Immigrant Justice Fund operated in 17 states with a staff of 43, 80% of whom were former trafficking survivors. They'd helped over 3,000 people escape exploitative situations. Senator Park's task force had shut down 62 operations similar to Victor's. Victor Mallory was serving 23 years in federal prison. And Natalie Pruitt had just been named one of Time magazine's most influential people, standing beside her sister Maria, now a certified teacher working with immigrant children, at the press conference. When asked how she'd survived and built something so powerful from such trauma, Natalie smiled. I found someone who believed me when I had no reason to be believed, someone who saw me when I was invisible. And I learned that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is refuse to stay a victim. She paused, looking directly at the camera. If you're out there, trapped, scared, thinking no one will help, don't give up. Keep gathering evidence. Keep fighting. Keep surviving. Because someone is coming for you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someone will see you. And when they do, everything changes. In his office on the 43rd floor, Adrian watched the press conference on his laptop, pride swelling in his chest. The girl who'd slept under his desk had become a warrior, and he'd been privileged to witness her transformation.